The last two problems in this section involve word problems. So what you're going to have to do is you're going to get a word problem, and in order to solve it, you're going to have to translate it into a system of two linear equations in two variables. Okay, so in doing that, the first thing you're going to have to do is define your variables, okay, the quantities that you're looking for, okay? And every time I teach this, I always start out, before we do the word problems, I give this example, okay? So on this sheet of paper, I have x equals hamburgers, which equals 780, and y equals hot dogs, which equals 275, okay? So suppose your word problem involved hamburgers and hot dogs, and you solved the problem and you got an answer of 780 and y equals 275. Okay, so the thing is, what do these numbers represent? Okay, you know, x equaling 780. Okay, maybe we're at a sporting event and they're selling hamburgers and hot dogs, and 780 hamburgers were sold and 275 hot dogs were sold. Or maybe 780 is how many calories are in a hamburger, and 275 represents the number of calories in a hot dog. We don't know because the variables weren't defined specifically enough. Okay, like for x, is x the number of hamburgers sold, or is it the number of calories in one hamburger? Okay, my point is, when you are doing this and you are setting up your variables, you need to be very, very specific about what the variables represent. If this were a quiz or a test and you just told me x is hamburgers and y is hot dogs, you're not being specific enough for the reasons I just explained. Okay, so you would lose some points over that. Okay, I want you to be very specific when you are defining your variables. So keep that in mind going forward. Okay, so let's go ahead and look at the first word problem. Okay, and word problems will keep coming up throughout the chapter. Okay, all right, so here we go. Let's go ahead and read the directions. It says, formulate each situation as a system of two linear equations and two variables. Be sure to state clearly the meaning of your x and y variables. Like I just mentioned, be very specific. Solve the system by either the substitution method or the elimination by addition method, and be sure to state your final answer in terms of the original equation, or sorry, original question. All right, here's the first word problem we're going to do. A fruit grower uses two types of fertilizer in an orange grove, brand A and brand B. Each bag of brand A contains 8 pounds of nitrogen and 4 pounds of phosphoric acid. Each bag of brand B contains 7 pounds of nitrogen and 6 pounds of phosphoric acid. Tests indicate that the grove needs 720 pounds of nitrogen and 500 pounds of phosphoric acid. How many bags of each brand should be used to provide the required amounts of nitrogen and phosphoric acid? Before continuing with the video, read this question thoroughly, okay? Understand what is going on and try to identify what you're looking for, okay? All right, the first thing we need to do is define the variables, okay? We need to state what the variables represent before we can use them to form equations, okay? Usually, you can figure out what you're looking for in the last statement of the question. If I read here, it says how many bags of each brand should be used. Okay, so what's going on here is that, you know, we have this fruit grower who has this orchard or this grove, and to supply the required amounts of nutrition, the phosphoric acid and the nitrogen, he's using a combination of brand A fertilizer and brand B fertilizer, and we're trying to figure out how much, you know, how many bags of each he should be using to provide the required amounts of nitrogen and phosphoric acid. Okay, so the question says how many bags of each brand should be used. Okay, so that is what we're looking for. Okay, how many bags of brand A fertilizer should be used, and how many bags of brand B fertilizer should be used. Okay, so we're going to write that out. We're going to let X be the number of bags of brand A fertilizer to be used. Okay, and then we're going to let Y be the number of bags of brand B fertilizer to be used. Okay, so we have two unknowns, X and Y. Okay, usually you'll see when you're doing these word problems, however many variables you have, that's how many equations you're going to need. So since we have two variables, we're going to need to set up two equations. Okay, all right, so we know there's going to be two equations. So the question is, what do those equations focus on? Okay, well, go back through the problem. Okay, brand A and brand B, that's your variables. Okay, what else does this question keep talking about? Okay, well, it keeps talking about nitrogen and phosphoric acid. Okay, so that's where the two equations are going to come from. Okay, we are going to have one equation that is set up based off of the nitrogen content. And then the other equation is going to be set up based off of the phosphoric acid content. Okay, those are the other two themes that you see throughout the problem. Okay, all right, so let's deal with the nitrogen equation first. Okay, I am going to go through the problem and I'm going to underline everything I see about nitrogen, and I'm going to put it in red. Okay, so I see 8 pounds of nitrogen, 7 pounds of nitrogen, 720 pounds of nitrogen. Okay, that's all the nitrogen stuff. Okay, so all of that is going to go into the first equation. Okay, all right, so again, the Grove is getting so much nitrogen from the brand A fertilizer, and then so much nitrogen from the brand B fertilizer, and it's got to have a total of 720 pounds of nitrogen. Okay, so on the right side of the equation, okay, however much nitrogen comes from brand A plus the amount that comes from brand B, okay, has to add up to 720. So that's kind of a framework for our first equation. Okay, the quantities have to add to 720 pounds. Okay, all right, so let's go ahead and fill it in. Okay, so let's think brand A. Okay, every bag of brand A contains 8 pounds of nitrogen. Okay, so how much nitrogen is coming from brand A? Well, every bag contains 8 pounds. How many bags are we using? Well, the way we set it up, we're using X many bags of brand A. Okay, so we're using X many bags of brand A, and every bag of brand A contains 8 pounds of nitrogen. So that's going to yield a total of 8 times X pounds of nitrogen from the brand A fertilizer. Okay, and then you're going to do the same thing for brand B. Okay, we know that every bag of brand B contains 7 pounds of nitrogen, and we're using Y many bags of brand B. Okay, so the amount of nitrogen yielded by brand B fertilizer is going to be 7 times Y, because you have Y many bags and every bag contains 7 pounds. Okay, so if you add up the amount of nitrogen from brand A and the amount of nitrogen from brand B, you get 720 pounds of nitrogen. Okay, so that's how the first equation works. Okay, the phosphoric acid, that's going to work similarly. Now I'm going to go through the problem and I'm going to underline everything for phosphoric acid. So I see 4 pounds, 6 pounds, and then 500 pounds. Okay, so again, the phosphoric acid, we need a total of 500 pounds. Okay, it is coming from both brand A and brand B. Okay, so let's see here. Okay, let's talk about brand A. We're using X many bags of brand A. Every bag of brand A contains 4 pounds of phosphoric acid. So brand A is going to yield 4 times X many pounds of phosphoric acid. And then you're going to add the amount of phosphoric acid that comes from the brand B fertilizer. Okay, you're using Y many bags of brand B fertilizer, and every one of those bags contains 6 pounds of phosphoric acid. So the brand B is going to yield 6 times Y pounds of phosphoric acid. Okay, so if you take the phosphoric acid from brand A and add the phosphoric acid from brand B, you want a total of 500 pounds of phosphoric acid. Okay, all right, so this is our system of equations. If we solve this for X and Y, we will figure out how many bags of each type, each brand of fertilizer the fruit grower needs to use. Okay, so then you've got to think about what's the best way to solve the system. Okay, these numbers are pretty big. Okay, so graphing is probably not the best way. Substitution or elimination is what's left. Again, because the numbers are pretty big and you've got numbers in front of the X's and the Y's, probably elimination is going to be your best bet. Like for example, if you have an 8x, you could easily get a negative 8x by multiplying the second equation by -2. Okay, so we will go ahead and solve this one by elimination. Okay, so let me go ahead and solve. So over here, I'm going to write the first equation. I'm going to leave it alone. And then the second equation, we are going to multiply by -2, okay, to get a negative 8x here. Okay, so I'm going to do -2 times 4x plus 6y equals 500. Okay, so let's go ahead and do that. Okay, I am going to leave the first equation alone. And then I'll go ahead and distribute -2 through the second equation. So we're going to get negative 8x minus 12y is equal to negative 1,000. Okay. The 8x's are going to cancel because you have a positive one and a negative one. Okay. So now you need to add. You're going to get 7y plus negative 12y. That's going to be negative 5y is equal to, if you do 720 minus 1,000, that's going to give you negative 280. Okay, so now this is easy to solve for y. Divide both sides by -5. Okay, and you're going to get y is equal to 56. Okay, watch your signs. If you had gotten a negative y value, that wouldn't have made sense. You can't get a negative number of bags. Okay, so that would have indicated you did something wrong. Okay, so y equals 56. We still need to get x. Okay, so to get x, just go to one of the original equations and plug in y equals 56. Okay, all right, so I will go up here. I guess I'll pick the first equation. Why not? All right, so we're going to plug in the fact that y has to be 56. We're going to get 8x plus 7 times 56 is equal to 720. Oops. All right, so this is going to tell us that 8x plus, let me do 7 times 56. So that's 392 is equal to 720. Okay. So to solve for x, I'm going to move the 392 over. It's going to tell me 8x is equal to 328. Divide both sides by 8. I get x equals 41. Okay, so here are your answers. Okay. Since this is a word problem, you need to interpret the answer in terms of the original problem. Okay, so remember x represented the number of bags of brand A, y represents the number of bags of brand B. Okay, so we are going to write the answer is that the fruit grower should use 41 bags of brand A fertilizer and 56 bags of brand B. Okay, and that is your answer. So let's try another one.